You are not here by chance, and this moment is not random. There are times when life becomes so loud with confusion, disappointment, and unanswered prayers that we begin to believe we are alone in our thoughts. You may have been scrolling absent-mindedly, trying to distract yourself from the weight you've been carrying, yet something drew your attention to this message. That pull is not coincidence, it is alignment. When your heart is overwhelmed and your mind is tired of replaying the same questions, sometimes the answer doesn't come as a voice, but as a moment of recognition. This is one of those moments. There is a deep human tendency to dismiss timing as luck, but there are intersections in life where timing carries meaning. When you reach a place where you no longer know what to do next, guidance often arrives in unexpected forms. It doesn't always come with thunder or dramatic signs. Sometimes it comes quietly, meeting you exactly where your faith feels thin. That is because direction is most needed when certainty has disappeared. This message arriving now is not about information. It is about reassurance. You have been wrestling internally, weighing memories against fears, hope against exhaustion. The fact that this message reached you at this precise point speaks to the awareness that you are seen even when you feel overlooked. There is an understanding of your struggle that goes beyond words, a recognition of the silent battles you fight when no one else is watching. You may feel as though your prayers have been echoing without response, but this moment is evidence that nothing has gone unheard. Life often conditions us to believe that if something is meant to be, it should be effortless. Yet some of the most meaningful experiences come through endurance rather than ease. When you are at the edge of giving up, reassurance becomes essential because despair clouds judgment. This is why reminders appear right when your resolve begins to weaken. They are not meant to force a decision, but to slow you down, to keep you from acting solely out of pain. There is comfort in knowing that your struggle has context. What you are facing is not isolated from the greater story of your life. Every challenge you encounter shapes your discernment, your patience, and your depth. The moment you are in right now is teaching you to listen more carefully, to respond rather than react, and to recognize the value of timing. You are being reminded that even in uncertainty, there is direction unfolding. Allow yourself to pause and receive this moment for what it is, an interruption of despair. You are being encouraged to reflect rather than retreat, to breathe instead of breaking. This reminder is not asking you to ignore reality, it is inviting you to see it through a wider lens. Sometimes clarity begins not with answers, but with the assurance that you are exactly where you need to be to receive them. Not every difficult relationship is a sign that something is wrong beyond repair. There are connections that feel heavy not because they are unhealthy, but because they are being stretched into something stronger. Discomfort often shows up when growth is happening, and pressure does not always mean destruction. Many people mistake struggle for failure, yet some of the most valuable bonds are formed and refined in moments that test patience, character, and commitment. What feels like a breaking point may actually be a shaping point. Relationships, like people, go through seasons, There are times of joy and closeness, and there are times of misunderstanding and strain. The challenge is that we often expect consistency without allowing space for development. When expectations are unmet, frustration grows, and the easiest response becomes withdrawal. But not every season of difficulty is an invitation to leave. Some are an invitation to learn. Strength is not proven when everything is easy, but when effort continues even after disappointment. Pressure has a way of revealing what truly exists beneath the surface. It exposes communication gaps, unresolved wounds, and unspoken fears. While this exposure can feel uncomfortable, it is also necessary. Without it, relationships remain shallow and fragile. Refinement is rarely gentle. It requires honesty, accountability, and the willingness to confront what has been avoided. This process can feel exhausting, yet it often leads to deeper understanding and healthier connection. Walking away can feel like relief because it removes immediate tension, but it also removes the opportunity for transformation. Staying does not mean accepting harm or ignoring boundaries. It means discerning whether the struggle is producing growth or simply repeating damage. Some relationships are worth fighting for because they carry potential that has not yet fully emerged. That potential is often hidden beneath layers of misunderstanding and emotional fatigue. Development requires time, and time demands patience. In a culture that celebrates quick fixes and instant gratification, waiting can feel like weakness. But patience is not passive, it is active endurance. It is choosing to remain present while progress unfolds slowly. It is believing that improvement is possible even when evidence is limited. This kind of patience builds resilience and teaches emotional maturity. There is also personal growth that comes from staying through difficulty. Challenges force self-reflection, highlighting areas where change is needed on both sides. They teach empathy, humility, and the value of clear communication. These lessons do not disappear even if the relationship eventually changes form. They become part of who you are. What you learn in the process strengthens your ability to build healthier connections in the future. When a relationship is being developed rather than destroyed, there is movement even if it is slow. There are moments of understanding, brief breakthroughs, and signs of effort. These are indicators that something meaningful is taking shape. Difficulty does not automatically disqualify a relationship. Sometimes it confirms its depth. The key is wisdom, recognizing whether the struggle is producing growth or simply consuming strength. Resistance often carries a message that is misunderstood. When challenges arise, the first assumption is usually that something is wrong or that the situation has failed. Yet resistance does not automatically mean rejection. In many cases, it signals that something valuable is present and worth contending for. If there were nothing meaningful at stake, there would be no opposition, no tension, no demand for effort. Resistance has a way of revealing importance by testing endurance. Consider how value is treated in every area of life. Things that are precious are protected, guarded, and sometimes contested. No one fights over what holds no worth. In the same way, when a relationship encounters resistance, it may be because it carries significance that has not yet fully been realized. The struggle itself becomes an indicator that there is more beneath the surface than what is immediately visible. What feels like constant opposition may actually be proof that the connection matters deeply. Resistance also exposes weaknesses, not to condemn, but to correct. It brings hidden issues into the open, forcing them to be acknowledged rather than ignored. Communication gaps, unmet expectations, and emotional wounds often surface during moments of strain. While this exposure can feel overwhelming, it creates an opportunity for healing that comfort never provides. Without resistance, these issues would remain buried, slowly eroding trust and understanding over time. It is important to recognize that resistance demands growth. When everything flows effortlessly, there is little motivation to change. Difficulty forces reflection and adjustment. It challenges assumptions and pushes both individuals to mature beyond emotional reactions. This process can feel uncomfortable because growth always disrupts familiarity. Yet familiarity without depth leads to stagnation. Resistance breaks stagnation by requiring intentional effort and conscious choice. Many people confuse peace with absence of struggle, but true peace is often the result of perseverance through struggle. There is a deeper stability that develops when challenges are faced rather than avoided. That stability cannot be achieved by escaping resistance. It is built by engaging with it wisely. When resistance is met with patience, honesty, and humility, it transforms from an obstacle into a teacher. There is also discernment required in understanding resistance. Not all opposition is meant to be endured, but not all opposition is meant to end a journey either. Wisdom lies in observing what resistance produces. If it leads to reflection, growth, and increased understanding, it may be serving a purpose. If it only causes harm without any movement toward healing, that is a different signal. The presence of resistance alone is not the deciding factor, its impact is. When resistance is viewed through the lens of value, it changes perspective. Instead of immediately asking, "Why is this so hard?" the question becomes, "What is this teaching?" That shift opens the door to insight rather than despair. Resistance, when properly understood, is not a verdict of failure. It is often an invitation to strengthen what matters most. Growth in relationships does not happen automatically. It requires intentional effort, emotional awareness, and a willingness to mature beyond impulse. Patience becomes essential because meaningful change rarely happens on a convenient timeline. People often want resolution without process, healing without honesty, and restoration without discomfort. Yet real growth unfolds gradually, shaped by repeated choices to respond with understanding rather than reaction. Patience allows space for emotions to settle and clarity to emerge, preventing decisions that are driven by frustration instead of wisdom. Wisdom in relationships is not about knowing everything. It is about knowing when to pause, when to speak, and when to listen. It recognizes that words spoken in anger can undo progress that took months to build. Wisdom understands that timing matters and that not every thought needs immediate expression. It also involves discernment, knowing the difference between a moment that requires firmness and one that requires grace. This kind of judgment develops over time through experience, reflection, and humility. Forgiveness plays a central role in relational growth. yet it is often misunderstood. Forgiveness does not erase accountability, nor does it minimize hurt. Instead, it releases the grip that resentment has on the heart. Holding on to unresolved offense keeps relationships trapped in the past, unable to move forward. Forgiveness opens the door for honest dialogue and renewed effort. It is a process, not a single decision, and it requires emotional strength to choose healing over bitterness repeatedly. Emotional maturity is what sustains growth when feelings fluctuate. Feelings are powerful but unstable. They change with circumstances, stress, and misunderstanding. Emotional maturity allows individuals to acknowledge feelings without being controlled by them. It creates the ability to communicate needs clearly, accept responsibility for mistakes, and remain steady during conflict. This maturity is developed through self-awareness and the willingness to grow even when it is uncomfortable. Growth also demands vulnerability, which can feel risky after disappointment. Opening up requires trust, and trust often needs rebuilding after it has been strained. Vulnerability allows deeper understanding by revealing fears, expectations, and desires that may otherwise remain hidden. While it exposes the possibility of hurt, it also creates the possibility of genuine connection. Without vulnerability, relationships remain surface level, unable to withstand pressure. Another essential element of growth is commitment to the process rather than the outcome. When the focus is only on immediate results, discouragement sets in quickly. Growth-oriented commitment recognizes that setbacks are part of progress, not proof of failure. It encourages consistency in effort, even when progress seems slow. Over time, this steady investment strengthens communication, deepens respect, and builds resilience. Relationships that grow are shaped by daily choices, choosing patience over impatience, wisdom over impulse, forgiveness over resentment, and maturity over ego. These choices are not always easy, but they create a foundation that can support lasting connection and deeper understanding. Walking away often feels like the quickest path to relief. When emotions are intense and exhaustion has set in, leaving seems to promise peace and freedom from conflict. It removes the immediate pressure, silences difficult conversations, and creates distance from pain. Because of this, many people equate walking away with strength, believing that choosing separation means choosing self-respect. In reality, walking away is often the simplest option because it requires no further emotional investment. It ends the struggle, but it also ends the opportunity for growth. Staying, on the other hand, demands a different kind of strength. It requires the courage to face discomfort rather than escape it. Remaining present during conflict means confronting misunderstandings, unmet expectations, and personal shortcomings. This process can feel draining because it forces honesty where avoidance would feel easier. Staying is not about stubbornness or fear of change. It is about resilience and the willingness to do the internal work that challenges expose. Choosing to stay and work through issues requires emotional courage. It means being willing to listen without immediately defending, to speak without attacking, and to acknowledge pain without assigning blame. These are not instinctive responses. They are learned behaviors that develop through self-discipline and reflection. Courage shows up when you resist the urge to react impulsively and instead respond thoughtfully, even when emotions are running high. There is also vulnerability involved in staying. When you choose to remain engaged, you open yourself to the possibility of disappointment. You risk being misunderstood again or feeling unheard once more. Yet vulnerability is essential for healing. Without it, walls remain intact and resolution becomes impossible. Walking away avoids vulnerability entirely, but it also prevents genuine connection from deepening. Staying requires strength because it involves endurance. Progress in relationships is rarely immediate. Conversations may need to be repeated, trust rebuilt gradually, and habits changed over time. Endurance is the ability to keep showing up even when results are not instantly visible. It is the strength to believe that consistent effort can produce meaningful change even when doubt whispers otherwise. It is important to clarify that staying does not mean tolerating harm or abandoning personal boundaries. True strength includes discernment, the ability to recognize when effort is producing growth and when it is causing damage. Courage is not staying at any cost. It is choosing to invest where growth is possible. Strength is demonstrated not by how long you stay, but by how wisely you engage. When staying is motivated by hope for healing rather than fear of loss, it becomes a powerful act of courage. It reflects a belief that challenges can be faced and that growth is possible. Walking away may bring temporary relief, but staying and working through difficulty builds emotional depth, resilience, and strength that lasts far beyond the moment. Temporary pain has a way of distorting perspective. When emotions are raw and disappointment feels overwhelming, it becomes difficult to see beyond the present moment. In those seasons, pain speaks loudly, convincing the mind that what is felt now is what will always be felt. Decisions made in that state are often reactions rather than reflections. Acting while wounded can lead to choices that solve immediate discomfort but create long-term regret. This is why allowing temporary pain to dictate permanent decisions can be so damaging. Pain narrows focus. It draws attention to what is wrong and magnifies it until it feels all-consuming. In that space, patience feels unreasonable and hope feels unrealistic, yet pain is rarely a reliable guide. It reflects the intensity of the moment, not the entirety of the situation. When life is viewed through the lens of hurt alone, possibilities for healing and change are easily overlooked. Time and distance from pain often reveal options that were invisible in the heat of emotion. Endurance creates room for clarity. When you resist the urge to decide immediately, you allow emotions to settle and understanding to deepen. This pause is not weakness, it is wisdom. It acknowledges that strong feelings deserve to be felt, but not necessarily obeyed. Giving yourself space to process pain can prevent irreversible decisions made under pressure. Often, what feels unbearable in the moment becomes manageable with time and support. Breakthrough rarely announces itself loudly. It often arrives quietly after persistence has replaced panic. Growth tends to happen beneath the surface before it becomes visible. Just because improvement is not immediately evident does not mean it is absent. Seeds grow in darkness long before they break through the soil. In the same way, progress in relationships And personal healing often begins internally before it shows outward results. Many people abandon efforts too early because they misinterpret discomfort as a sign to stop. However, discomfort is often part of transformation. Muscles grow through resistance, understanding grows through tension, and resilience grows through challenge. When pain is viewed as temporary rather than definitive, it becomes something to move through rather than something that controls outcomes. This perspective shifts the focus from escape to endurance. Waiting does not guarantee a specific result, but it preserves the opportunity for a better one. When decisions are delayed until emotions stabilize, choices tend to align more closely with long-term values rather than short-term relief. Endurance keeps doors open that impulsive decisions close prematurely. It allows space for dialogue, change, and unexpected improvement. Recognizing that pain has an expiration date changes how it is handled. It becomes something to navigate rather than something to obey. When endurance is practiced, it strengthens character and builds confidence in one's ability to withstand hardship. Often, the very moment someone considers giving up is the moment just before clarity, healing, or breakthrough begins to take